Hello and good evening. Welcome to another episode of Eddie V Live. Welcome. It's good to be back with you. Last day of the week, Thursday is my Friday before the weekend for the podcast. Not much going on today, I don't think. It was hilarious. If you guys saw the video, Nick Fuentes, he was in a I guess a legal dispute with a lady, a Jewish lady. And we hadn't really seen the altercation. I was not expecting the altercation to be what it ended up being. Is this mic working? I think so. The altercation ended up being what I thought it was going to be. He ended up. So they released the video because the case was dropped, and he chucked her off. He got this bunch of people are coming to his house, and you can watch the video online somewhere. But the actual thing, he pepper sprays her in the face, and then he chucks her off the porch. It's actually pretty. It was a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be very tame, but it was intense. He really did it. He really went for it. So case was dropped, which is great. So that was kind of a big thing today, just to see that video and be like, wow, people really do things. People really do stuff in life. What else? The X is still up. If you guys have X, please follow the channel's X account. I'm going to be honest with you. If you don't have X, don't get it. It's quite awful. Not much important stuff going on there, honestly. Yeah, I don't know if in like a year it's not helping the podcast. I probably have to keep it, honestly, just to have that presence there. But doesn't even matter. Like any sphere you're looking into, political, religious, Catholic, health, whatever. It's just most of it is slop. It's pretty bad garbage. I don't recommend like the Catholic stuff. I think people get paid now to like get views or reactions or something. So that might be why, but people are just they keep posting recycled stuff. The Catholic stuff is all just like recycled basic stuff. Some of it's good. I don't want to bash it all. But people, I think they're just trying to say stuff for shock value, maybe. I don't know if I want to call people out specifically, but it's all just like moralisms, priests, laity, moralisms. Kind of the same stuff you see from like Fox News or CNN, where big title, sometimes not even true, was what the situation is actually about. Yeah, so don't really recommend it. There's a lot of traffic there. It seems to be true. There's a lot of traffic, a lot of people on there, but yeah, not really worth it, I don't think. But anyway, if you are on it, if you're already on it, make sure you find the show, Eddie V Live Show. Anything else on the docket? Oh yeah, and I would be curious people's comments about weddings. It's always weird for Catholics with weddings because we have such a strong belief in what weddings are really supposed to be. And I just got a text from a old friend telling me to RSVP for the wedding, and I'm like, I'm not going to the wedding. I don't even want to go. Because nowadays weddings are like these huge party things, and it's not even really. I mean, I guess it is, but it doesn't seem to be really about the marriage and about God and about this indissoluble union, which most people don't even believe anymore that it is. So it's like, why are you having the wedding? It's mostly just a little pat myself on the back thing nowadays. I just don't want to go because it just sounds like a lot of trouble, a lot of drama and trouble. I ain't about the drama. But yeah, that's it. That's all that's going on. Maybe we can talk about weddings and all that jazz another time if it comes up. Today, I wanted to talk about the stages of the spiritual life. I'm reading this book for the third time. This is The Fulfillment of All Desire by Ralph Martin, Dr. Ralph Martin. It's a tome. It's amazing. Like I said, reading it for the third time, I recommend it. It's maybe like 30, $40 brand new. My buddy, my friend, he got it for like 50 cents at like was it like a giveaway? I don't even know. I'd have to ask him. It was like a Catholic bookstore was doing a whole sellout thing. It's crazy. It makes me never, I don't think I've bought a book since he told me that. 50 cents for this book. I don't even want to buy another book anymore. And just to put you guys on, my family, they love these estate sales or these garage sales. I guess it's more estate sales, or it's a little interesting. Like someone dies, and the kids or whatever, they like just take what they want, they sell everything else, the company sells it for them. But you get some great deals. I mean, my family is like clothing me with dead people's clothes. There's great deals, but it just makes you never want to buy something new ever again. I don't even want to. It like hurts me. I feel like it makes me like greedy or avaricious. I feel like I'm like holding on to my coins. But it's like, if my friend can get a book for 50 cents that's worth like $40, it's like, I never want to buy anything again. Sorry. And that was kind of a tangent. But yeah, this book is amazing. It's about the spiritual life, the fulfillment of desire. It's about union with God, which is what we all should be approaching. The show is, about everything, about culture. This is really the main thing of life, the spiritual life. We talk about politics here. We talk about religion. Obviously, the Catholic Church, the Catholic religion is the only true religion, is the religion. But it's good to talk about these stuff. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I never hear, like, from the pulpit, from Catholic influencers or speakers or anything, except for Gabi After Hours. Check him out. He is awesome. But I never hear about this stuff. And I'm reading it again for the third time. I'm like, gosh, I have not heard like anyone talk about this. So important. So I want to talk about more stuff from it and from similar books. He's just quoting like 7 church doctors, basically. I can only think I can name off the top of my head. Teresa Lisieux, St. John of the Cross, St. Teresa of Avila, St. Bernard of Clairvaux, St. Augustine, St. Francis de Sales, and oh no, who's the last one? I think there's 7, so I'm missing one, maybe 8. But some of those heavy hitters I mentioned and a couple more. And he's just running through like the whole spiritual life. So there's going to be a lot of stuff. Maybe I'll glean from that and those saints from their writings. But I want to talk about the first thing, which is the stages of the spiritual life. And so those 3 stages are the Purgative, the Illuminative, and the Unitive. And it's really cool when they talk about these stages. They don't all talk about it perfectly like this, but they all have like their form of these 3 stages. Like St. Teresa is famous for having her 7 mansions, but they really line up with this 3-part thing, and people break it up into different ways. But I like the 3 stages, and there's a lot of different markers for these 3 stages. Like St. Bernard of Clairvaux talks about is like, sometimes you'll be in all 3 stages, and it's not like a perfect, like I'm in Purgative and I have nothing in Illuminative. It's not like that, but it is helpful to like kind of measure yourself. Like, am I still growing in the faith? Am I growing towards union with God, which is the most important thing, right? We don't want to ignore politics. We don't want to ignore our families. We don't want to ignore our jobs, but this is the thing of life. This is the meat, the essence of life, is growing in union with God. So I want to cover these 3 stages. So it's really interesting. For the 3 stages, all of these saints, these doctors, seem very solid or aligned on the fact that the first stage is where you have, when you enter the first stage, you're actually entering the spiritual life. So that's like, you're like recognizing that you're a sinner, you need God. And so when you enter to that purgative stage, you've recognized that, and you're turning away from sin because you have and they call it a slavish fear of hell, like a slave who's just afraid of punishment. And they all describe that. And it's really talked about as a positive thing initially, is if you can start to convert to the Lord because of fear of hell, that's not actually a bad thing. That's a good thing. It's a bad thing if it doesn't progress from there. You just stay there but initially it's really good. And you think about scripture where it says, the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord, or something along those lines. So that's the purgative stage, and I'll talk about other characteristics of the purgative stage. And then the illuminative stage is that relationship with God where you love God, but you love him as a mercenary. They call it mercenary love, where it's not really for fear of hell now. You're serving God, you are loving God, you are designed to have union with God because he can give you a reward, which you could see in many different ways. A worldly reward, as in like, peace and happiness in this life. And also obviously heaven, virtues. He can give you stuff. He can give you consolation in prayer. So that's mercenary. The second stage is illuminative, and you're hitting that stage of mercenary love. And then the third stage, the unitive, is where that love now moves to you just love God for the sake of God. It's not for fear of punishment. It's not for desire for reward. You just love God and you're willing to endure whatever and to do whatever and to be inspired by his spirit to do whatever he desires you to do. You are uniting yourself to his will. So that's one way to look at them. I think that's a really cool way. And you can see how in the beginning it's like fear of God, fear of punishment is actually a great thing, but then how it evolves. And the famous, I think it's St. Paul saying, perfect love casts out fear. So that perfect love casts out the fear of damnation. And then so some other things. In the purgative, you're going to be you're going to see your sins, and you're going to hate mortal sin, and you're going to hate venial sin, and even affection for sin. And you're going to be fighting against those consciously. And St. Francis of Sales is really going to break that open, a great doctor of the church, where it's interesting because a lot of people would think that purgative would be just turning away from or hating mortal sin. And it is really good to focus on that word hate. That's what the word they use. They use hate. They say you hate the sin that you see. St. Augustine, even in Confessions, talks about like he hated those sins. Not hating people or anything, but you hate those sins. You hate the evil that you've committed that is in you. But not only is it mortal sin, but venial sin and even affection for sin, St. Francis of Sales talks about. Is like in the purgative, you're turning away even from the affection of sin. So if you turn away from mortal sin, that's amazing, that's great, and you're kind of cruising in this venial sin territory. You can't stop there. The saints would be like, do not stop there. You need to hate those venial sins. You need to be consciously, not saying that you're going to be perfect in this life and you're never going to commit a mortal sin. Some of them even argue that it's impossible, that even the greatest saints, they'll commit unwilled venial sins. And then there's venial sins that you do will, which is another thing. But they're saying, you need to fight against those with all you have. St. Teresa of Avila is talking. I think I said her. St. Teresa of Avila is talking about how like it is so important in the spiritual life because a lot of people will stagnate. They'll get rid of mortal sin and they'll just be like basically just trying to avoid. They'll be like flatlining and trying to just avoid mortal sin. And that's great to not mortally sin, but they're saying you need to attack those venial sins. And St. Teresa of Avila is super passionate about you need to avoid occasions of sin, mortal and venial. And for her, she's talking about like getting in situations where she's unnecessarily talking with people that are more worldly or not necessarily good for her spiritual well-being. And I can think of a ton of examples. I just mentioned, that wedding that I'm invited to. Could I go and it would be fine? He's not Catholic. Yes, it would be fine. I don't think it would cause scandal or anything. But for myself, thinking of all the occasions of sin there, is it really necessary? And we're not really close anymore. It's like, no, there's no reason I should go there. The only reason I would go there is for attention, free food, and stuff like that, which is not great. So St. Teresa of Avila is super passionate about attacking those venial sins and avoiding occasions of sin. Even the affection of sin, St. Francis of Sales talks about. So that's another thing from purgative. And then when you move to illuminative, he's not even mentioning sin anymore. He's talking about like almost a positive frame where he's talking about increase in virtue. This is still St. Francis of Sales. Increasing in virtue. And he mentions a lot of virtues. Patience is always mentioned. So funny. Patience, humility, poverty of spirit, gentleness, all these things. He's like, you You got to focus on growing in them. And I've read books of priests or different saints talk about this. They're like, it can't just be some fugazi, very general, wispy, I'm going to increase in virtue. They're saying pick a virtue you are struggling in and consciously daily do like the opposite of that vice you have to grow in that virtue. So like patience, they want you to like, if you're trying to grow in patience, they want you to like be thinking about it in the morning, praying with it. During the day, consciously be thinking like, I need to be patient. You're going into a situation that's going to challenge your patience. They're like, you need to be focused in on that. Do the opposite. Like take 20 seconds before you speak, every time you speak, or something crazy to like counteract that impatience that you have. So that's the second illuminative. I want to see if I missed anything in the illuminative. Illuminative. I'm even saying that right. Yep. And then the last one is the unitive, where they're talking about, there's different words. I think St. Teresa of Avila is one that said the spiritual marriage that happens there, where your will is very much uniting with God's will. And you're basically like, you're in tune with the spirit. You have these inspirations and you're just so quick to follow the inspirations from God. You've grown in virtue. You're still growing in virtue, but you're very strong in the virtues. So you're just like, your disposition is just to do God's will at this point. St. Teresa of Avila talks about is like, you might get to a stage where like, you're just not going to commit a mortal sin. And and I don't know if she means that like it's impossible. I don't think she means that, but like, it's just like, you're just good right now. But she says you'll always be potentially open to venial sins. And she talks about specifically the sins that you don't necessarily will. You're just like those ones that it happens and you're like, oh shoot. As opposed to the one like you kind of like, you're like, I'm going to tell a white lie right now. And you kind of know what you're doing. So, but in this unitive stage, it's perfect spousal love, the union of the wills. You are, and one of the ways that you know that you're united to the will of God is that you're following all the commandments very devoutly. People don't like the commandments today, but they're very important. You need to follow them. And not just like the bare minimum, like do not commit adultery, right? There's a lot of things under that commandment. And the person in the unitive is just like very, I don't want to say perfectly, but they're very attentive to the commandments of God and to following them. Very rarely following, not because they're like constantly thinking about the commandments, but because they've grown so much in virtue, they just don't, it's just not a huge thing in their disposition where they would be like impatient with someone or something like that. And that's the final stage. Another thing I want to mention about the final stage is this is where you have the love that just loves God for the sake of God, called spousal love or filial love by the saints, by the doctors. And it's important. I think Catherine of Siena might have been the one that talked about this. I could be wrong on that. It's one of the female saints, female doctors, I believe. But they talk about how just because you're in the unitive and spousal love, I think it's St. Teresa, just because you're in the unitive spousal love stage of the spiritual life, doesn't mean that it's not useful to go back to mercenary love and to slavish love or slavish fear. She says, most of the time you're going to be in this union with God's will, but in times of great temptation, she says it's good to think about the reward, heaven specifically, and it's also good to think about the consequence or the punishment of hell. So it's not like you never think about heaven or hell again. That's just not how it works. But she's saying you only need to reference that when great temptations happen. It is kind of crazy how much you see temptations coming upon these great saints. It's almost like they're tempted more. Maybe that's not correct, but they are hit with a lot of stuff. And you can read like Padre Pio's life. Oh my goodness. He's literally fighting with the devil. And then Saint Teresa Lisieux's life, especially at the end of her life, she's like having all these temptations against faith. And you just see like these strong soldiers of Christ, they've battled so hard. And then, it's not like they battled so hard and like the war's over. It's like they battled so hard and the devil goes harder on them and they go harder too, which is awesome. Yeah, so those are the three stages. That's just a brief overview. I do want to cover more from this book. There's so much good stuff that I just don't hear talked about. If there's anything about the spiritual life you'd like to discuss, I know some people have mentioned the like stages of prayer, which this is related to. But there are stages of prayer. I would really hope that people focus on, praying the rosary faithfully, mental prayer, and the other stages will come. I don't think those are things you really have to, because I think after the third mansion of prayer with Saint Teresa, she literally talks about how it's like after your mental prayer is established, anything beyond that is your, as far as your effort is concerned, it's like trusting in God, growing in virtues, eliminating mortal, venial, and affection for sin. That's like where your battle is. And then if God so desires, he's going to have to supply those higher levels of prayer. She Saint Teresa of Avila has like names for all these. Like there's like the prayer of quiet and different things like that are higher up in the prayer chain, so to speak. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about this too much. I think the big things we need to concern ourselves with is, like I said, the virtues, making sure we've got up to the third mansion, the mental prayer, vocal prayer, things like that. Consistency in prayer is so important. But yeah, I could talk forever. I've been making these too long. I keep going too long. I want to make them like 10, 15 minutes and I cannot do it. I talk too much. But anyway, those are the 3 stages. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns in the comment section. Please like, subscribe, share it with people if you think it's good, or even if you don't think it's good, let them get mad at me. But thanks for tuning in. I will see you next week. This is the final episode of the week, unless I get crazy over the weekend. But God bless you. God keep you. God be with you. And I will see you on the next episode. Good night.